Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MSL Society webinar discussing the new MSL Board Certification. My name is Samuel Dyer, and I'm the chairman of the board for the Medical Science Liaison Society. And for those on the line that don't know, the MSL Society is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and in fact, the only organization dedicated to advancing the global MSL profession by helping MSLs and managers become more effective in their careers. We do this and accomplish this by offering numerous unique resources for MSLs, MSL managers, and even candidates, including, as you can see here on the screen, over 100 presentations from MSL leaders, a free mentoring program for newly hired MSLs and managers, over 80 original MSL reports on various topics impacting MSLs, including things like what metrics and KPIs MSL teams are measured by and are using, and of course our global MSL salary and compensation report and numerous other resources. We certainly are excited to be here today to share more details about the MSL BC, and we're excited to hear today to have our sort of second panel discussion regarding the first ever professional board certification for the MSL profession. We had a lot of details that we're going to share today. We have three awesome speakers and MSL leaders who were very involved in the creation of the MSL BC. We're going to share their perspectives on what the certification means for MSLs, the profession, and companies that employ MSL BC credentialed MSLs. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few quick technical details. As participants, you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. However, in your control panel, you'll notice that you have a question panel. And so we encourage you to type your comments or questions in the question panel. And throughout the presentation today and throughout the panel discussion, we're going to try to address questions at the end, as many as we possibly can. The other thing for anyone who might be experiencing technical difficulty or difficulty rather hearing us, just make sure that the volume on your computer or headset is turned all the way up, and the same for anyone dialing in, and also ensure that you're logged into the webinar on a computer or device so you can see the actual slides presented throughout the webinar. We've also been asked that by several people if we're recording this. Yes, we are recording this webinar. It'll be available on the MSL Society website for everyone. We'll just need a few days to get it up, but it will be under the, as you can see there, the MSL certification page in just a couple of days. I also wanted to certainly acknowledge and thank H1 for being a sponsor. H1 is a global data platform for every healthcare professional and healthcare organization. Their database is huge. It's one of the most widely used platforms for MSLs to identify and keep up to date with their KOLs. And so if you want to know more about H1, to learn more, you can just go to h1insights.com or just Google H1 KOL. So here we are talking about the MSL BC, and for the first part of our call, I want to share some details about how the MSL BC was developed, who was involved, things like eligibility criteria, and a few other details. And then we'll have a very interactive panel discussion, including some polling questions for you to participate on several important questions raised by the MSL community. I think it's important to know who was involved, and developing a professionally recognized certification program is an enormous undertaking, which requires a great deal of planning and preparation to ensure the program's success. And so in an effort to create a credible and valid certification program, we enlisted an esteemed panel of 23 global MSL leaders from pharma, biotech, medical device, medical diagnostic companies who worked diligently throughout the development of the MSL BC program and volunteered numerous hours attending multiple in-person meetings to identify areas of competency for testing and developing appropriate test questions and ultimately assisting with the validation of the exam. So certainly we would not be here if it weren't for this group of esteemed professionals, and we have 3 of them with us here today. So the Medical Science Liaison Board Certification was developed after several years of exploration and demands made by the MSL community for a certification that reflects the MSL as a distinct professional with very specific skills and knowledge. And so the goal of the MSL BC is ultimately to set industry recognized standards for the MSL profession. And so to do this, the MSL Society hired one of the very top certification industry testing leaders to help launch the program. And all of this was based on international certification standards. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, a very large group of subject matter experts consisting of MSLs and MSL leaders volunteered and were involved throughout the development process. And so to achieve the MSLBC credential, an MSL or an MSL leader must successfully pass the MSL certification exam, which is there to evaluate one's acquired knowledge, skills, and competencies related to the MSL role. And so from the very beginning, we've collaborated and been supported by these numerous MSL leaders from around the world who have done all this volunteer and an effort to create this comprehensive examination. And so the other thing that was really important is during the development of the exam, it was determined that the exam would need to be administered virtually, but proctored live. And that's due to the fact in numerous countries, there are no computer-based testing centers, so locations to take an exam. And so as a result, to make the MSLBC available to all MSLs and MSL leaders globally, the exam is administered virtually. And so according to, again, international standards, as you can see here on the screen, there are multiple steps to create a valid and credible certification program. And so over the last few years, working with this large group of individuals, we completed each of the necessary steps which are outlined here. And you can see on this slide, these are the various steps that we went through. And it's important to understand that I keep mentioning this, but it's really important that the MSLBC exam has been designed in accordance with testing industry standards for validity and reliability. So I want to share a couple more slides here that highlight some of the important details about the MSL BC certification. Starting first with eligibility. You can see here on the slide, requires a bachelor's degree. And one of the validations there is that we ask for candidates' highest degree or transcript to be submitted with the application, and 1 year of cumulative experience working full-time as an MSL or leading a team of MSLs. And so an important note here, this certification is not available for aspiring MSLs, i.e. those trying to break into the MSL career. And so one of the other things that is important to note here is that all applications and information will be verified. And so I don't want that to come across that we don't offer programs for aspiring, because we do. We offer a lot of programs for aspiring MSLs. And so if you're interested in that, you can check out the MSL Society website for various programs. Some additional questions that came up on the last call and that we've had a lot of questions around is just more information about the exam. You can see here, the exam consists of 140 multiple choice questions. 125 of them are scored. One needs to, in order to pass and earn the MSL BC credential, you have to get 86 of the 125 scored questions correct. You have up to 4 hours to complete the exam. Most people do not take anywhere near that, but you do have up to 4 hours to complete the exam. Some additional information about the exam. I kind of already mentioned this. It is virtual, can be completed anywhere, but we do recommend you don't use your company issued computers, as they often have company firewalls. So just be aware of that. It is administered through the MSL Society's LMS, or Learning Management System. And again, it will be proctored live. And so that's an important part of the application and exam process, to be aware of that. Recertification, we got asked that as well. The MSL BC will require those credentialed to engage in documented continuing education activities within a 3-year recertification cycle, which means you'll take the exam and then you'll have 3 years after which to recertify. We're actually working on all of the specific requirements. There's a group of MSL leaders that will be working on this, a good representation, again, of pharma, medical device, diagnostic, et cetera, who are working on this. And so in the end, somebody who has actually earned the credential will have the choice of either taking the exam again or doing the continuing education credit. So just be aware of that. Just a few more quick slides here. Fees, that was another question that came up. So you can see here on the screen. And by the way, I on every slide here, you see the URL. You can go to the website to learn more details. I'm just really trying to give a highlight of this. So as a member, the fee is $450 US. Non-member is $550 US. And again, that is for 3 years. That certification is for 3 years. And then finally, I gave a really quick highlight of some of the more pertinent and more frequently asked questions that we've received. But for further details, I would encourage you to check out the website and learn more by downloading the candidate handbook. You can see it here on the screen. The MSL BC certification handbook provides a lot more detail about the MSL BC credential and what it means to the profession. And you can find more information regarding the exam content, as well as it'll guide you through the certification experience. And you can kind of see there all the check marks of the information that the handbook covers. So I would highly encourage you to go and download that. This document alone, I will tell you, took months and months. We hired who most people consider the global expert. I'll use our term, a global KOL, if you will, on certification, as well as a team of certification lawyers and a testing company, of course, I mentioned. All were involved in creating this handbook. It's very, very thorough. I think it's about 23 or 24 pages, goes into a lot of detail. I would highly encourage you to download that to learn more. So here we go. So the real reason we're here, and I know all of you are excited, I'd like to now introduce our panel of MSL leaders who were pivotal in helping develop the MSL Board Certification and are really here to discuss why it's important. So you see here on the screen, we have Dr. Cherie Hyder, who is Medical Excellence and Operations Lead at Biohaven, Dr. Linda Traylor, who is VP of Medical Affairs at Biodesics, and Dr. Elizabeth Cooper, who is Regional Director of MSLs at Novartis. So what I want to do now is I want to certainly turn it over to our panel. And what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on, we have 4 polling questions we're going to ask all of you, but certainly we want to address these really 4 main topics of the webinar today. So I just want to kind of jump into this, and we're going to go around the virtual room, and all of them are going to address each of these questions. So let's just get into it, and let's just kind of start with this first question. And so I want to start with, I think I'm going to start with Elizabeth on there, and then I'm going to get the feedback from Cherie and Linda. Elizabeth, maybe you could start us out. I mean, I guess the first question here is why is the MSL BC important for the profession, and why did you get involved in development and creation of it? And if I hope you don't mind me mentioning, you certainly were somewhat vocal and skeptical about that this could even be done. So maybe we could start there.
Oh, absolutely. I've thought about, this certification process for quite a while. I have a nursing background, so I was actively involved in the various board certifications for different specialties for nursing. When I came into the industry, I was with a smaller company. There were just 2 MSLs, and I began to reach out and meet with other MSLs and just to get some familiarity about the role and to help us create it. And so from there, I started thinking about, well, it'd be great to have like a certification process. So this is what I originally thought, because I'm coming from this nursing background. But the more I looked into it, there were so many variations of MSLs out there, different company definitions, different entry into practice, different background and degrees. And I just thought it was just, an overwhelming process to come together and be able to find some common standards and competencies that would not only span the entire MSL group, not only in the US, but internationally. So I jumped into the process because I was a naysayer. I didn't really believe it could be done. And so whenever I have that thought in my head, I'm like, get involved and find out if it is. If I'm going to be a naysayer of this process, I want to, be actively involved and have some credible information. So in the process, as you can see, took several years, took 3 years. And it is so in-depth, and it really is very similar to the board certifications you see with physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners. It's a very intricate process. One of our first meetings, when they were kind of setting up those competencies, and then we began to create the questions, I thought, this actually can be done. And throughout the process, as we honed it down, and even got to some of the cut scores at the end, I was just very proud of what we came up with. And I do believe that it really does provide it really does test and validate those basic skills that every MSL should be able to understand. So it's a long-winded answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I love it, and that's exactly why I wanted to ask that, Elizabeth, because we all remember that, and so that's excellent perspective, and thanks for sharing that. Cherie, you want to address these two?
Absolutely. I got involved mainly because I recognize the fact that we are in truly a skills-based environment, and what's happened over the years when we look back at education and degrees is that we typically, once we got a degree, we would go work somewhere and somebody would train us to do the job. In today's environment, things have moved so rapidly and things are changing constantly that employers are pretty much expecting people to walk in the door with the skills available to do the job. And one of the ways that we can demonstrate that and have more relevant modern skill sets is through certification. So I think it's really competitive, and being able to demonstrate those skills helps validate that ability to come in the door and really be of value from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so why did you get involved?
So I got involved because I recognize the fact that we need to have that relevant, skill set base. And I want to, I'm always involved in training. So being able to get involved in developing the foundation for that and setting what that standard is, so that when people take it, it's relevant and it's points toward fundamental skills that we want everybody to be able to demonstrate when they come into any MSL role.
Excellent. Yeah. Linda, do you want to address this, talk about this?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit. I think my colleagues and friends covered it quite well, but can you hear me okay first?
Yep.
Okay. So I think one of the things to add there is that this role, the MSL profession, has exploded in the last 2 decades. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally exploded. It's so competitive. There are sometimes up to hundreds of candidates for every role that is announced. And I think that in and of itself is, first of all, great news that there's a lot of interest in the field. But that also, it comes to a point where you do need to have sort of a level set baseline set of skills going in, or being able to compare candidates and being able to just really understand. So I think just it's almost like a new filter for which we need to define what the bare minimum of the skill sets needed, and it's a good refresher. So I think it's important just because the competition's fierce, the role has a lot of popularity associated with it, and we just need to be able to evaluate baseline skills for the professionals that have been MSLs for at least a year. Why I got involved is I had, kind of like Elizabeth, I had no idea what this entailed and was slightly skeptical myself. But the process in and of itself, multi-year process, and some of the calls have been very enlightening on the seriousness and the caliber that is needed for development of a program like this. I had no idea, and I think it made me a better MSL or professional, I think, just going through the process.
Yeah, I would agree with all of you. I think it's excellent perspective, and I don't think any of us had any idea or inclination. I certainly myself didn't of how long of a process this was and what was involved. And I got to tell you, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but certainly from my perspective, I felt like this was a brutal process in terms of what was involved and all the various aspects. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. So here's what I want to do. I want to do a poll question, see get all of you listening involved. And so Jeff is going to display our first poll question, and then we're going to kind of let the panel respond to that. So here's the first question. From your perspective, do you think the MSL BC is valuable to the MSL profession? So let's get all of you to vote and respond to that. We'll give this maybe 20 more seconds here. Okay. Jeff, do you want to reveal the answers here? Interesting. So would the three of you like to discuss that? Because the one that obviously sticks out here that is very interesting is the 52%. Any thoughts on that? I'll let you go, Linda, first.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's brand new.
Yep.
The scope of the value of any board certification in its infancy is always going to be a little bit questionable how much we can use it. I think there's no question it's valuable for the MSL profession. I think the "I'm not sure" response is probably where my head is I'm not sure the full scope of its value. I know it's valuable for baselining skills and allowing MSLs to have a level set of knowledge going in and evolving their career. But I'm sure there's things that we don't even know about or haven't thought about where a board certification would be of value even further down the line when it becomes more, there's a better understanding of what's entailed and what it means to have these initials after your name. I think it will go beyond even our understanding and expectation of potentially even our KOLs when dealing with MSL. So I think it's early on. I fully understand the "I am not sure" response, and I agree.
Yep. Linda or Shuri, sorry. Linda. Thank you, Linda. Sheree?
Yeah, and I think it is the unknown, and I think the value tends to grow over time as people do experience the opportunity to take the exam and really fundamentally understand how much they can learn through the course of taking it themselves, the confidence that they get, the validation of their skills and competency, that personal satisfaction and being able to broaden their skills and knowledge. So I'm pretty well certain, having gone through the development of the questions and the rigorous nature and the breadth of what these skill sets represent, that everybody's going to learn something from going through it. So even though you're not sure, I think by giving it a try, giving it a go, you're going to find that you really do gain something personally from it, first and foremost, and then professionally.
Yeah, I agree. Elizabeth, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, of course, I concur with my colleagues on the benefit to the individual, right? There's going to be a sense of confidence and accomplishment that they feel. When I think about the term profession, so as an MSL was not necessarily that recognized several years ago. It was maybe a career choice, a job. But when you begin to create it in the realm of profession, certification and validation of those standardized skills, standardized competencies is very important. So I think it's definitely critical and supports the MSL as a profession.
Yeah, excellent. Jeff, thanks for displaying that. So this is an excellent transition, and I'm going to move to Sheree. I think it's a really good transition into the second question, and this is our next question for the panel, and that is how the MSL BC will impact the MSL profession. So really the question is, how will it, or how will the MSL BC impact the profession? Do you want to take this one first?
Absolutely. And having earned the MSL BC myself, first and foremost, I'll say that my company was really proud to have people who are certified as part of their medical affairs organization. So it really does elevate the profession, it elevates the standard in the industry and the respect and regard that the MSLs who earn the certification have. I think that it's also, something again that will bring that continued professional development and may even help with promotions. If you're looking at how do you get to the next level, having this certification may be an added boost to be able to have that discussion with your leadership and saying, I've done all of these things in addition to the certification. I've achieved certain level of standards and competency that allow me to continue to progress in my career path.
Yeah, excellent perspective. Yeah, please. Linda, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to the polling question. Right now, the baseline already immediate value to the profession is sort of self-improvement and self-satisfaction for baseline skill set and knowledge. But I think the sky's the limit for how. It's in its infancy to have a board certification program like this for the MSL profession. So it's still fairly new, and the scope of what it can do for the profession is probably even broader than what we think. But I agree, the metrics internal, I think if you hire new candidates that did not have prior MSL experience, it's something that would be part of their career development path, is at the 1-year mark, being able to get the MSL BC as part of their professional development. I see it as being a baseline for how managers assess the candidate pool, depending on how they're filling out their team. I certainly, if I have 2 candidates in front of me, very similar in skills, and one had MSL BC and the other didn't, that's kind of how I would choose. I would choose the MSL BC over the other if they were equal candidates. So I think the scope of this is still yet to be realized, and we may not even have an understanding how broad it can go.
Yeah, we definitely don't, and that's part of the development. I agree with you, absolutely. Absolutely. Elizabeth, you kind of talked about this, but any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, not too much to add. I do envision, especially for companies, so maybe the smaller companies or medium-sized companies, that this might be a very good way to set that baseline, as Linda had described. If someone comes in new to the MSL role, they go through that year, and then this is kind of a certification process for them, and like a milestone to get to. So I really like that idea, but I think it brings us together as a profession, begins to standardize that and make this just a very much more visible career choice as well for individuals.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great point. Jeff, let's go to the next poll question for everybody on the call. So here's the poll question. Do you think the MSL BC will have a positive impact on the MSL profession? So we've kind of been talking about it for a few minutes, but from your perspective and what you've learned, not only on this call so far, but maybe in your own research, do you think MSL BC will have a positive impact on the MSL profession? We'll give this about 30 seconds here and let people vote. Okay, Jeff, you want to display the answers here? Interesting. So we're very consistent on the I'm not sure, which is reasonable. Any quick comments from any of the panel on this one? I think we kind of already talked about it, but any additional thoughts on any of this?
It's expected.
Yeah, it's expected. Yep, absolutely. So, and that's the learning process. And as we've already talked about, and all three of you have discussed, it's we're trying to figure out the long-term impact and how all of the possibilities of how this will be certainly utilized. We know from an individual standpoint, but there's probably other ways we're not thinking about. Let me go on to the next discussion for the panel. So the next one that we have had several people talk about, love to get all three of your perspective, and maybe Linda, this time we'll start with you. Why, I mean, can you address why MSLs and MSL leaders should take the exam? Why should they do this? We kind of talked a little bit about it, but maybe if you could take that a little further, Linda.
Yeah, I think the MSL leader, that's the easy question. I think you need to have an understanding of what the exam is so that you really see the value of it when you see that somebody else has it. So I think the experience of it, the refresher of studying for the exam, it can only improve your baseline knowledge and refresh some of the things that you probably have forgotten about. So I think MSL leaders, it's a good refresher, and also allows you to really have an understanding of the people you might be evaluating that have it, what that means. That why MSL, I think it's a good professional metric. I think it's something you should aspire to baselining what the profession should be.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the whole point, right? The whole point of this is to demonstrate that they have a certain level of competencies and skills. I mean, that's the whole point of any certification. Shareed, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly for the MSL leaders, I'll say, we should always lead by example and take it, because we do want to know what's in it, especially when we have people on our team taking it, or just understanding what the meaning of that MSL BC certification is. But there's always this increasing importance on the validation of skills. and being able to have something at hand that points toward that higher standard of medical excellence, especially in a competitive marketplace. So, having those certified MSL professionals is going to benefit the company with a third-party validated knowledge base, leading to that higher caliber of industry reputation, higher quality work, and ultimately more value-driven enhanced results. And, by having that standard in place, we elevate our profession, we elevate that understanding of what that is. And not all MSLs or MSL leaders are created equal. Much like any other profession, you could have, for instance, even doctors who are not quite as good as the next. If you don't have a standard in place to create a threshold of competency, how do you really discern between the ones that are better, perhaps, than the ones that aren't?
Yeah, excellent. And I agree with you. And of course, one of the advantages of doing it this way is that it's an independent third party validation, right? That has been agreed upon by a very large set of recognized MSL leaders. And so I think that's a really important consideration when someone's thinking about this. Elizabeth, any thoughts on this from your perspective?
I think the only thing that I have to add is there is a great deal that you can learn from taking this exam, especially on the leadership side. As we prepared and, the questions, we had multiple discussions and about, the answers, and it really brought you back. You had to remember, some of your research levels and understand that. So I think there's a lot to learn from it. I think you'll get a sense of confidence if you complete, as you complete it, and then you'll begin to know, areas that maybe you need to brush up on.
Elizabeth, I was just laughing because for those on the call that have no idea, I like the idea that the way you put that was very soft. I like that. The discussions we had about these questions.
Yeah. Yes,
Because for those who weren't in the room for 6 days, we got a group of about 16 MSL leaders that all sat in the room and had some very I don't know how you would describe that, but some very detailed discussion around what questions should be going on and the answers to that. Any commentary you want to add to that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I do. I want to, the cut, when we got to the cut point scoring, where we were
Yep.
on the call for several hours and we were actually answering the questions, not knowing the answers, and then kind of, putting them where, where they fit for the cut point, what percentage. And those discussions were pretty, pretty intense as well. But we were able to, really come together on that. And so that, to me, that when we, after doing all of that, then coming to this last where we had to go through every single question again, I think was just so telling, right? And
Yep.
I know that I learned a lot and over the process. So yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. It was again, I'm going to use my word brutal. It was a brutal process. But, I think it really highlights that this was not sitting around a group of people like, oh, it's all flowery and like, oh, we all agree that this should go in there. I mean, there was a lot of discussion and debate that went into that. Jeff is going to put up the next polling question for all of you. Here's our third polling question. For all of you, do you think there should be a hiring preference given to those that have earned the MSL-BC credential? Again, based on our discussion, cursory discussion here, maybe what research you've done, what you know about earning a certification in any field, should there be a hiring preference? So let's give that 30 seconds and we'll let the panel respond to that. Okay, maybe 5 more seconds. Okay, Jeff, do you want to reveal the responses? Yeah, interesting. So, Linda,
Not
you had a
surprising.
chuckle here? Yeah.
You know, I almost think this question should be qualified a little bit, just because if I were, trying to break into this field, it would not only be a no, but a hell no, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think if a team is fortunate enough to be able to diversify their team, the level of skill across their team and hire some new unexperienced candidates, those trying to break into the role, that is a good thing, and that's a separate, completely separated from this question. I think the question really should be qualified. If you have, if you're hiring for an experienced MSL and you've got a couple of candidates that are comparable in skill set, should you give a preference to MSL BC candidate? And that's more in the line of the hell yes, of course you should. But so if that's how I would narrow down that question, just so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all by the responses. I'm impressed by the maybe. So there's people that are open-minded,
Yep.
and I think that's the key. This is new. People need to take it. The leaders need to take the exam, know what's on it, and be able to, have some confidence in it. So I think I really like to see this. To me, it's very positive.
Yeah, I agree, especially because we're so early in the process. Sheree, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that it's one of those situations where you have to have taken the test to really appreciate the value that it would give to the hiring process, and that we're just now beginning to see some job descriptions where they may say, MSL BC preferred or recommended, and that gives people an extra edge to obtain that level of standard and competency. So I think that we're leaning in that direction, and it's going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I know of a couple of companies that, speaking of that are already considering that they've reached out and are actually going to put that in their job description. So I think that's interesting, and certainly that will have a positive impact on how it's perceived, of course, and it will certainly offset some of those maybes and answer some questions. Okay, Jeff, let me go on to the next and last and final question here that we want all of you to address from the panel. How can how you can actually benefit from earning the MSL BC? This has come up a lot, and so maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about how, from your perspective, how you can benefit from earning the MSL BC. Sheree, I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Yeah, and so I had mentioned previously, that it gives you added confidence and personal satisfaction. It's something that you can certainly add to your resume, to your business cards, to your company signature line on your email. And it's all of those things that help elevate that standard of professionalism to give people that understanding of your competence and your ability. So I think that it certainly adds a lot of value in that regard. And from there, it's really just that continued polishing and professional development that everybody needs. If, for instance, I obtained my degree 25 years ago, the way that I was trained in the skill sets of those days are very different from the way that they are now. So obtaining that certification gives people confidence that my skills today are current, and that I operate within that modern scheme and understanding of what the MSL role is.
Excellent. Yep, I think it's a great perspective. Elizabeth, you want to address this?
Yeah, I think we've mostly talked about the benefit being, not only do you gain confidence, I think there'll be things in the exam that will make you, go back and dig down in that a little bit more. So I think the confidence, the learning would be the major benefit for the candidate.
Yep, absolutely, and a validation, right? A confidence of their abilities and skills.
Absolutely.
Linda, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I don't have really much to add other than what Cherie and Elizabeth have stated. Other than I think maybe is in for the new candidates breaking into the MSL role is something to strive for.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that would be an added goal.
Absolutely. So let's do this last poll question for all of you. Jeff, can you display this last poll question for the audience? So, do you think earning the MSL BC credential could possibly benefit your career? So we kind of talked about that just now, but after kind of the discussion today, do you think it could possibly benefit your career? It's a broad, and that could mean a lot of things, and benefit could mean a lot of things. But just from a broad perspective, do you think that it could possibly benefit you? So let's give this 15, 20 seconds and have all of you participate. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, Jeff, do you want to display the responses? Interesting. Okay, so I think again the numbers that stick out here is the not sure yet, that 30%. We kind of talked about it, but any singular comments on this from the panel? Cherie, any thoughts on this?
I think you see the benefit once you do it. And I think that not having been through the test, not knowing, I mean, the psychometric testing and what Elizabeth and Linda and I and everybody went through to learn how to write these questions, I wished I had had this training earlier in my career when I was doing a lot more academic teaching, because the questions are really well written and constructed in a way that does demonstrate your skill set, and it's validated in that regard. So in terms of the benefit, until you take the test, until you begin to experience it yourself, I think that's when you'll really understand the benefit to your career.
Yeah, I think it's a great perspective, and I agree with you. Learning how to write these questions, I mean, we spent a half a day just on that, and wow, I mean, I think we all learned a lot, and I had no idea, that's for sure. Elizabeth, any comments or thoughts on this?
No, I'm just pleased to see a good percentage of people that feel like it would be beneficial to their career. And just reiterating that I think you will gain that confidence. You will be surprised on how much you know, and then how much more that you can learn. So I think it's really exciting to see this 61%.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool too. Linda?
I'd be interested to see how this changes over time. You know, next year, 5 years from now, I think we'll see a different percentage distribution. But at the beginning stages of something like this, I agree. It's impressive to see the 61% when it's so new.
Yep, absolutely. Jeff, let me take the next point here. So we we have a few minutes left, and I've got kind of a bonus question that I would like the panel to address. And we got 5-6 minutes left for our time together. So if we could just take a few moments, and if the panel can address, and it's not going to be on the slide because it's kind of a bonus one if we had time. I'd like for all of you to address this whole question that has come up with a lot of people. How does the company benefit from their MSLs or their managers earning the MSL BC? So how does the company benefit? I think I've got the rotation right, but I think maybe Linda, you're up first.
Okay. So I think the company can benefit probably even more than we can anticipate now. But I think an immediate benefit to the company with just having an understanding of the baseline skills that your team has. But also, I think you could use it in your onboarding programs and sort of putting your new candidates versus your experienced candidates down different onboarding programs in your company based on the credentialing program as well. So I think there are a lot of ways in which companies can benefit, but I think just having satisfaction that you have a team with a set of baseline skills that you can count on is meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. We've had several companies that have reached out to us that said that they're actually asking all their MSLs and it'll be a part of their year-end plan. So we've had several companies that are actually having their team do this. Elizabeth, any thoughts on that? How the company would benefits or from their MSLs or managers earning the credential?
I do. So if I go back to my nursing career, when you had the the nurses that had the board certification, the hospital became a magnet hospital, or it made the hospital, it was much more prestigious to work there. They paid a little bit more. They had this standardized group of people that were motivated, and so I think that as companies begin to adopt the certification, understand it, and learn a little bit more what it can bring to them, I think we'll see more companies jump on the bandwagon here.
Excellent point. Yeah, and that's something that we just don't know about. I mean, that's kind of that thing in the future about, how will KOLs and how will institutions react to someone being MSL BC certified versus other MSLs, and we just, we don't know what that impact is going to be yet. Cherie, any thoughts on this final question?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I agree. We want to be the preferred partner, and there's a lot of MSLs clamoring for the KOL's time. So being able to set yourself apart from others is one aspect that's important for the company. As well, companies experience issues with retention, and it costs a lot to go through the process of reviewing candidates, bring them on board for interviews, hiring somebody, training them, only to lose them. And it's been proven that companies that invest in professional development for their employees have better retention rates. So by having this MSL BC certification and investing in your MSL team and in the caliber of those staff, they're much more likely to stay with you because they see how much you're investing in them. As well, when companies make those wrong decisions, hiring, it's very costly and it jeopardizes deliverables, and there's this added chain reaction of effects. So certification gives that additional assurance that skills are there and ready to be utilized by the MSLs at a standard that's really well respected. So certainly benefit to the company.
Excellent. So I think this was an excellent discussion. Thank you very much for all of you being a part of it. I want to certainly mention, if you want more information, it's here on the website. You'll see it here. I think today really highlighted the value of the certification, who was involved. But to learn more, we certainly encourage you to go to this page. I want to again thank H1 for sponsoring and being involved. I also want to remind you that unrelated, but another webinar coming up, the MSL Society recently conducted a global survey to gather insights on current practices and activities of MSLs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our next webinar, you can see here, is coming up April 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're actually going to send a link for registering for this event in the email after the webinar is sent out. So with that, I'm actually going to wrap up and close today's webinar. I want to thank Linda, Cherie, and Elizabeth for being here. Excellent dialogue, excellent points. We really hope that you found this to be valuable. We'll have of course, lots of other webinars coming up, but we're also going to do a brief survey. We'd like everyone to participate as soon as the end of the webinar. We'll send that link to you as soon as it ends. But again, thank you very much. If you have any questions, there's my personal contact details. Reach out to me. But otherwise, we encourage you, if you want to learn more about the MSL BC, go to the website. Thank you very much, everyone.